everyone, thanks for coming. I'm Tian Zhang, the curator of Hereafter, and this is the Artist Talks. So we'll be hearing from all the artists, including Jazz, who's dialing in. I just want to start by acknowledging that we are here on the land of the Cabral people of the Darug Nation, and I want to pay respects to elders past, present, and the elders of the future. I think, this, as you'll hear from the artists, a lot of the works actually contain, images of places were made on Darug land. And so, really want to thank the elders for their ongoing custodianship of the land, waters and the skies. A little bit about the exhibition. It's called Hereafter. It's about the future, and it's about what we wish for the future, what we want for the future, and thinking about the future in a different way, and challenging, I guess, some of the overarching imagery that we're given by, places like Hollywood, and actually thinking about a future that is connected to ourselves, and connected to the places that, we live, work and play. I will start by introducing Jazz Money, who will talk a little bit about her work, and then we'll take questions from anyone for Jazz to start with, and then we'll let Jazz go, and then we'll hear from all the other artists, and then we'll have a bit of a chat. So Jazz, would you like to, I'm going to put you down on the table now, but please take it away.
I feel like that if anyone watched Q&A throughout COVID, and there was always like some weird screen that they'd tried to figure, I feel like that fella. Yes, hello, my name is Jazz. I'm on Gadigal land right now in my bed, so I'm sorry that I'm not there with everyone, but I am, as always, very grateful to live on Gadigal land. And also grateful to be digitally on Darug land, so hi. My works, the silk work behind all your, that was really, really fun to make. I was so grateful to Tian for the prompt of like a utopian vision, because I think it came through during a time in COVID where I was really not feeling any sort of palpable sense of a utopia, but actually feeling quite, I don't know, worried about the climate future, worried about like social upheaval. Like it was in the aftermath of Black Lives Matter that I think we started talking about it, or maybe not actually, but it came at a time when I was feeling a bit unsure, and so when Tian said like what about a utopia, I was like, oh, I don't know, and went for a walk around my house where I was living in the Blue Mountains on beautiful Darug and Gundungurra countries. And I was trying to think about like what would a utopia feel like to me, and I felt really overwhelmed by all the steps that I felt like you needed to take to get there, but instead started thinking about how it would feel once it was done and you could look back. And I was thinking about the sort of world I want my kids to grow up in, and that's kind of where the starting point for it was. I wrote that. It's kind of like a manifesto, and it's kind of like a monologue, but it's a dialogue between, or it's meant to be a dialogue between a parent and their child. And when I was thinking about that, I started thinking about like my younger brother, who's the person in that photo, and how like he's only 5.5 years younger than me, but just like so advanced and beyond where I am, but definitely where I was 5.5 years ago as well. And I was thinking about how like when we were growing up in the bush in like a small town, I was very like, being queer was something that I didn't have any sort of vocabulary for. And that made it seem really daunting and scary. And it took like moving to the city and living this whole life before I could kind of have a way of discussing that. And I was thinking about Elijah and how, I mean, they're going through the world at their own pace as well, but they were just a lot more advanced at the age of like 17 than I was. And I was thinking about how also kind of those utopian futures are here in some ways, that like there's this generation of kids that are creating realities that are so beautiful and rich and suit them. And that's really inspiring. And so I also wanted to make like a bit of an ode to that as well. So I took that photo of Elijah when I was back at my parents' place. And I don't know, I kind of wanted it to feel a bit blurred, like you couldn't tell if they were the elder talking back to you, or you couldn't tell if they were the young person receiving the info, or maybe they're just some sort of like sci-fi lord black fella in the space as well. So yeah, I guess that's the work.
Thanks, Jazz. Any questions from the audience? Or maybe I'll start with a question. How did you go about actually creating the text and the sounds that accompanies the work? Because, yeah, I thought it was really interesting. It really cycles through a lot of things that I think, you know, we take for granted or we take as given. And I'm just curious how you sort of went about creating this, a present from the future to look back onto now.
So I guess my first response to the show was because like I work as a poet mostly, if you can call it work, but that's kind of the form that a lot of my creative outlet takes. And so my first thought always is like, how would I represent this with language? And once I, you know, kind of had this idea about talking to a kid, I was like, well, where would I start? And so I was thinking about gender, because it seemed like a place where I can see hope and I can see change, and I can see the way that we're getting better as a society in that instance, and sort of starting there and thinking about how like, well, my kids will have two mums, and when I was growing up in the countryside, I didn't know anyone there was no one in my community who had same-sex parents, or just like a non-normative family. And so that also seemed like a place where I could like actually imagine having that conversation. And then from there, once you start like thinking about, well, what would it feel like if we abolish capitalism? Because God, that would be good. And then if we were able to sign treaty with First Nations folk and have, you know, repatriate the land and restore the land and heal the land. And once you start thinking about those things with hope, it kind of feels like you can't do one without the other, and you can't do, you know, it's only once we have treaty that we can actually start to address climate change. And once we start to address climate change, like ideas of abolishing the prison system and ideas of abolishing the police state and moving to a post-capitalist society, all those things feel so intertwined, which I think is part of the reason that they feel so daunting as a problem to tackle, or as problems to tackle, because like I don't understand how, well, I don't know how we move towards an abolitionist state while still living in a society that's totally dictated by capitalism, but I'm sure we can. It's such a recent thing. Those concepts have only existed on this continent for, you know, less than 250 years, and it just seems that's like such a little scratch in the dirt, right? And we have so many options to undo it, and it's just that holistic approach to undoing it all that I think makes me nervous. Well, not nervous, it makes me overwhelmed, but it also makes me hopeful.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of alluded to it a little bit just now as
Maybe
well, but were there any particular visualizations or aesthetic imaginings that were popping up in your head as you were developing the text, outside of all of the much necessary outcomes as well, as we step into that utopia?
Yeah, I think my brain like automatically went to some sort of like Hollywood sci-fi, because I guess that's like the bread and butter on what I was always raised that the future would look like. Like it would be really metallic and blue. But then I also started thinking about Blade Runner, and how that film is like full of like noir imagery and like all these like antiques and stuff. And I kind of thought that was funny, because I don't know, the things that are contemporaneous now will one day be antiques, and yeah, like imagine walking into an antique store in the future and it's full of IKEA. So I kind of wanted to evoke like a sense of like a suspended time space, but also like, you know, my little brother is like he's a very proud trans Indigenous man, and I thought, well, that's who I want to give. That's who I want to see. I want to walk into a space and see people like him just occupying it, because I don't know if there was a platform for folk like Elijah and like so many beautiful people of color and people in the queer community. Like visibility in those spaces has been so systematically undermined in the colonial state of Australia for so long, and in so many of the Western societies that kind of dictate our representational media. So that was just what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to see. And he also has that deadly tattoo, and like, why wouldn't you want to be looking at that?
Any other questions? Over here.
Hi. I've been thinking a lot about hope lately, and I just wanted to get your opinion on this, because I started to really consider that hope is a bit of a trap, because you're almost giving up the future to an unknown situation. And if you're hoping for something, it's just it's a wish almost, whereas, you know, something like an action, and rather than hoping, you are constantly working. And yeah, I'm still formulating this whole thought in my head, and I just wanted to get your opinion on it, really, because you mentioned hope a few times. And
yeah, I think that's super interesting. I think personally, I find hopelessness an easier space to sort of access. I think like being an Indigenous person living in this colony, it's like waking up every day and just sort of being confronted with the realities of a dystopia, like living in a dystopia. I feel myself being very inclined to despairing and seeing things as being like not being able to envision positive outcomes when I look at, you know, the government systems and things that dictate the world around me. And so I feel like when I am hopeful, when I can foresee a positive future, I'm actually more galvanized to work towards it. I think if I live in a place of not thinking that anything can ever change, then I wouldn't have the power to go out and, you know, go to rallies and speak to politicians and write letters and have fights with white family members and, you know, all those things. It's like the knowledge that we can be better and that we can work towards it, like that's what fuels me. And I think also recently I found myself more hopeful than I've ever been. Like, I think the climate crisis is a place where I just think, oh, fuck, what's the point in doing anything? We're screwed and no one is making any efforts. And then just like, I think in the last 6 months, kind of looking at global politics and seeing the ways that it seems like, you know, a lot of nations are making really sincere efforts to try and tackle the climate crisis. And even though Australia is pitifully absent from a lot of those conversations, suddenly I was like, oh, maybe my babies, like maybe I can have kids and they won't be raised into a firestorm of like acid rain and rising sea levels and literal firestorms. So I think that's where I'm at with hope. I appreciate what you're saying as well, as like hope is the lazy man's response, but yeah, I need it, I think.
thank you, that's really good. Thank you.
I thought it was really nice when you started and mentioned that, you know, this prompt for this exhibition got you thinking about Utopia and you hadn't before thought in that way. Are you going to keep writing around this idea?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. I think like Indigenous futurism and Black futurism, Afrofuturism, all those spaces. What do other people? There's also like solar. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, like cyberpunk but solar.
Yes,
I love
yes.
it.
Yeah, I think once I like, that's such a space that's like rich with where I want to be. And I've always liked to consume that media and kind of I hadn't given myself space to put myself in those contexts. And so, yeah, I think this show was really delicious in opening up doors for that.
I love that it was delicious for you.
Oh, I wish I was there with you, fellas.
Yeah.
Is this one of the first times you've printed your poetry in a physical format, or do you usually work like with objects as well? Is it usually like online or?
I think only in the last kind of year have I started being, oh no, that's not true. I've done some like 3D or interventionist installation sort of poems before, but I think it's really great. Like it's a space that I really like working in, because the page can be so boring and it can be really limiting and it can be pretentious and it can be inaccessible and it can be all those things. Like books are one way of consuming consuming words, right? But I think they've put too much on a pedestal, and being able to like kind of work physically and work with audio, work with film, and kind of be in space, I think makes words more accessible and makes them more alive, and also I think kind of takes the power of them away a bit. Like I don't think you could walk into and see that work and think like, oh, this is fact. But I think when things are printed on a page, they kind of start to hold this power. And I mean, I think the stuff that's printed in this show is really lovely, but sometimes I read stuff elsewhere where I'm like, I don't think these words should be given this power.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I think like in the last year or so, I've done more things that kind of exist in space, and that's really fun, and I like doing it.
We like seeing it.
We love seeing it, was the comment. Okay, great. Well, I think we'll move on and let Jazz go. So thanks for joining us, and yeah, hope you're feeling better.
Thank you. I wish I could hear the rest of the chat, but is it getting recorded?
It's getting recorded.
Okay,
Thank you. We'll just move around the room. So the next artist to talk will be Cal and Jay.
Hi, I'm Cal. I'd also like to acknowledge that I'm here on Darug land as well, and the work was made in Parramatta or Parramatta, which is of course Darug country as well. And the work was like really dealing with that tension of like, or like I've called it like spiritual distance, of like projecting what you believe onto a land that you think is yours. Yeah, it was kind of, someone was asking me what was the motivation behind the work, and I was trying to think of like what was the actual reason, and I think like the first reason was actually, it sounds dumb, but it was like irony, and I usually don't like irony, but it was that idea that it's weird to swim in a river, that it's actually normal to think it's weird to swim in a river, and that's to see someone swimming in a river is absurd, but it's actually quite a recent idea. You know, it's like within our like living memory, like people have swum in rivers, and it's only like our generation or like our parents' generation and generations on, which will be actually normal to not swim in rivers. And that was the kind of thought behind it. Yeah, so I grew up in Parramatta. My parents moved in like the mid-90s, and I always like looked at the river as like, oh, this is my river. And yeah, I grew up Hindu, and we practiced Hinduism, and I often tell the story of like we would take like our dead pets to the river and put the pets in the river and then like pray for them as if it was the Ganges or Ganga. And then it was later when I became an adult, I was like, oh, this is actually not the Ganges. This is actually like Parramatta River. And so I guess this work was really understanding that question, and that's why I gamified it, was to like kind of, it was a way of thinking about that question or that like kind of internal tension, gamifying that tension and trying to like work through it. So there were a few different ideas behind it. What else? The other thing, people often ask me about the mountain dew. And for me it was like so obvious, but of course it's actually not obvious at all. But I really like mountain dew. But I also, it's advertised to gamers, so there was that link. And like this stereotype is like a guy on like an incel on Reddit, drinking Mountain Dew and eating Doritos. It's like an energy drink, but I really love it because it's really interesting what the branding has actually achieved. It's like, it's called Mountain Dew, so it's like actually, the term is very like pure and pristine. It's like dew from the top of the mountains, you know, it's like so sensual. But then like the actual image of Mountain Dew is like a comical uranium, like Simpsons fluorescent green. And I think that contradiction is really interesting. But also like Mountain Dew, I guess there's something interesting that I found in like, when you brand something or call something Mountain Dew, you give it an identity. So you've given this like beverage the identity of dew of mountains, and you actually do the same thing in religion. So the Ganges or the Ganga Mata, you call the river like the mother, and so by personifying it or giving it a name, you've actually given it agency or an identity. So this work was kind of thinking of like what it would mean to like give natural entities like another kind of branding or identification. And branding sounds so like cold and like commercial, but it was thinking about that process of like what it means to deify something or like identify it. And then that means by doing that you give it respect. So I was looking at a lot of different stuff. I swam in the river and then I turned it into a game.
Can I have the first question?
Yeah, good.
Like, there's several questions. Okay, one, and I've been asking you this for a long time. How did it feel when you swam in the river? What happened afterwards? Next, I came here today and I actually walked behind it. You've got something on the floor, like this little sculpture, and you've also got like a cup of nails.
Oh, is that? Okay.
I don't know what the cup of nails is, but like what the hell was going on with either situation?
Okay, so I think the nails is an accident. Maybe I'm not supposed to do that.
That was like, I was like having an existential question. Like, what is this like cup of nails for? Like,
I think it's because the back of the box has like screws to take out the electronics.
Okay.
But the little statue, I always put little statues in my works. It's actually a character from One Piece. Does anyone watch One Piece?
We thought it was like a god.
But it is. I like it because One Piece, or like anime, like takes religion and like makes it quite comical and like surreal, but also like blends religion in like a lot of different ways. But the character is, he's the fleet admiral, Sengoku. He's actually retired, and his power is that he can turn into, his power isn't that he can turn into Buddha, but he can turn into the statue of Buddha. So that's his like power.
Okay.
I just like it. I should put different statues in my life.
Alright, and now answer the first part of my question. What did it feel like when you swam in the river? Please.
It was actually really nice. I really like swimming, and it was a hot day. So it was actually like a really nice temperature, and it was also really shallow. So that part of the river is next to Riverside Theatre in Para. It's like right in the city centre, like next to the Meriton, and like it was actually really shallow most of the way. It's like waist high.
Really?
So that surprised me. I shouldn't have tasted it, but it didn't taste bad. It was pretty much, it was a clear day, so it was like a calculated risk. I like talked to a lot of different people about it. But yeah, it felt nice, but I actually want to do it again, but this time like without cameras. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I guess it's something that I didn't think about, and I do kind of want to, like, I don't want to call it performance, but like, do it without cameras, because it's like, I was actually just thinking about okay, are you in the right spot? Are you in the right spot? Kind of thing. Because I had 3 cameras. Yeah. But it was really nice.
Nice. Okay. No, I was like concerned, but also interested for my own
Yeah.
bathing practices.
I think we were all concerned and interested.
But it's funny, like you walk in and you're like, I built up this suspense in my head of like, oh my god, what's going to happen when I get in? But you just get into water. It's like, going into a pool. It's like, obviously there's like other stuff there, but I was like, oh, it's just water. Do you know what I mean? So it's almost like relief or familiarity in that way. Yeah. But it's also past the bridge at that part, so in the next part, it's all concrete at the bottom as well. So this part's all dirt for the next part. So that was also funny, like feeling the texture of the riverbed was quite interesting. Yeah. Yeah, and there's like a dam. So the part I swam in is actually not directly connected to the ocean's water, because I'm like really scared of sharks. I was talking about this with them. I'm like more scared of sharks than I am about pollution, which is probably silly. But yeah, so this part is like there's less animals in this part. Yeah, but I've seen eels actually. I've seen eels in it. Yeah. And they're big. They're like 7 foot. Like, yeah.
And so what happened afterwards, just to complete Selva's question?
Just full complete. No bodily changes.
No. Yeah, I was like talking to actually, this isn't in the work, but I was like, I have an auntie who's like quite, I don't know what the word is. She's spiritual, I'll put it that way. But I told her that I was going to do it, and she was like, okay, let me like send some like well wishes basically. And then she like gave me actually like very specific rituals to do after the swim, because she has like spirits that she talks to, and she was like there's 2 spirits sitting on the river, and so you have to offer like a brown bow tie and a chocolate. So I did that after the swim, and then I actually drank red cordial as well because I was talking to a researcher from Western Sydney Uni. His name is Ian Wright, and he also worked for Sydney Water. And he's like, oh yeah, we're fine. Like I love swimming in rivers. He's like super enthusiastic guy. He's like, this is unofficial advice. He's like, just do it at least after 3 or 4 days of straight sun, because UV helps like kill bacteria, and rain would stir up the riverbed. So do it after sun, and to drink red cordial after you swim. I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, yeah, it's like I used to do all the time. Like I'd swim in the Hawkesbury or like the Georges, and I'd drink red cordial and I'd be fine. He was like, yeah, me and my partner used to do it all the time. I'm like, you're cracked, bro.
There was no actual reasoning about the red cordial.
Yeah, so I don't know. There's something in the raspberry that like supposedly like coats your stomach, and like the sugar is also good for your immune system. I don't know. I just did it. I didn't question it. It's kind of like, like other rituals. Like sometimes you don't question it, you just perform it, isn't it?
I mean, if it doesn't hurt you to drink red cordial, so may as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then I had a shower after, and that was it. Yeah, that was it. And I was fine. I was really wary for a few days, and I was like, but I think I was fine.
Man.
Yeah. But I did do a test swim where I actually think I got sick. But yeah, I don't know. It could have just been a cold, it's really hard to say.
We got a question.
I found it really interesting talking about how anime deifies its characters in a way, because I grew up watching anime before One Piece, and when I look back on it now and considering Western culture that I grew up in was largely without religion in any way, but a lot of my friends that I grew up with had all of the little toys and figurines and stuff all around their house, as you would like when you go overseas, because there's a bit more religion in some places, and you'll see all of these figures, all of these statues inside someone's house, and it's there to constantly remind them about, a way of living, a way of life, and how meta One Piece is in acknowledging that fact and then using that in their character, which has then made it to your artwork. And yeah, I've been thinking a lot about rising people up in your mind. Did you say that there was something within that character and that use within this piece?
the
Your
character
work.
at the bottom.
Yeah.
Not particularly. Yeah, okay, yeah, there is actually. There's like motive. It's hard to like not get into the story of One Piece to like, explain why. It's like a 1,000 chapter story, but it's funny. His character, he's actually like works for the government. He used to be like the boss of the army, if you like. And so on the back he has characters that says justice, and like One Piece is a lot about like governance and justice and like things like that. And it's funny to talk about this, but he's retired. But so the army and the government's really corrupt, just like our world. But he has a kind of sense of moral value or duty where he knows. You can see he has conflict. He has conflict throughout his whole kind of character arc where he has to do his job, but he realizes the government is corrupt. So it was that kind of conflict that I was interested in, but also, like you said, like I love anime and like sci-fi because like One Piece it's funny, it feels very religious, but also at the same time feels so secular. And same with like long animes like Naruto, like there's like really, like there are characters called like Indra and Asura and like, which are like Hindu mythology, or like Guan Yin, which is from Buddhism. And all these characters like mesh together in like a very free form way that I think is like very beautiful. And also, you know, like the old Hindu or like Chinese epics are also these like huge like poems and stanzas, and anime is like our generation's religion, if you like, without actually calling it a religion. And it's interesting because it does straddle this line of secularism that I'm really interested in, where it gets the morals, the stories, the ideas and the histories across and the values, but it doesn't become codified into ritual, except then fandom happens where people buy statues and things like
Makes
that.
it ritualistic.
Yeah.
Then, yeah. Cool. Thank you.
How did you practice the moves? Like, where'd they come from?
Oh, it's another like I learned it from YouTube, but the reference is it's from like Indonesian like theater. So it's normally like puppet theater, wayang, but there's actually like a human. It's funny, they call it human puppet, which is I guess what an actor is. So that I was like studying. I was watching YouTube videos of the dances.
That's research.
But actually, like my family into like practice the theater as well. But actually, the character that I'm dressed up as at the start, it's not super clear, but his name is Bagong, and Bagong is interesting because he's one of 4 characters called like Peranakan in wayang theater, which is it's actually I find this interesting that in wayang. So they have wayang is Indonesian theater, but in Indonesian theater they use a lot of like the Hindu stories, like the Ramayana and Mahabharata, but these characters, the Puranaka, that's actually not what they're called. They're called something else. But those 4 characters, they're not in the Indian Hindu versions. They're only in the Indonesian ones. So they're introduced characters. So I was modeling my moves off these particular characters and this character Bagong. And the reason why I like them is one, because they're introduced, like I am introduced to this land, and they're also comedic relief. So they're clowns. They're basically clowns. And so that's why the moves are like quite funny, because when people play these characters, they really exaggerate. Like one of the characters, his name's Samad. He has a hernia, and like that's his shtick. Like, so if he walks around like this, he has like, who's Bagong's dad? Yeah.
Did you just freestyle it according to, like, you practice the moves and then you just whatever your body needs to do in the space?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm not a dancer and I realized there's dancers in the room, so it's like I did try and choreograph it. I actually had the sequence in my head.
How
But,
beautiful.
yeah.
It's really glitchy as well.
Yeah. And it was funny watching the dances. It's like, it is actually like quite a glitchy dance. Yeah.
What was the meaning with the face paint?
Yeah, so the face paint was that character Bagong, yeah.
Cool.
So actually, my friends were teasing me when I sent them photos. They were like sending me Joker quotes from Batman. Everyone's got a big one to joke. But it like that's the kind of face paint like Bagong wears. Cool. Yeah, the character. Yeah.
All those clowning references are like so that it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess it's funny, like they are comedic characters, but they also serve the purpose of like the puppeteer will like give their commentary on the story through these 4 characters, and that was kind of why I wanted to dress up as this character too, because it's like I was interested in this idea of like avatar, or like in games you play another character, and in theatre you're either an actor, or in puppetry you're controlling these things. So it's, like in Sims you are someone controlling characters, and like so it's that kind of thing, like a commentary,
I was interested just to like hear more about the character journey that you've created in terms of like the narrative of the video.
True. I guess at the start now there's like text which kind of sets the world, and I was reading I still read a lot of sci-fi, so that was the setting. Like it was actually set just after the bushfire, just when the pandemic was kicking off. So it was kind of, it's funny, like sci-fi is often set in the future, but then I was thinking about this quote, like the sci-fi 15 minutes from now. I think it was something, I can't remember.
Max Headroom, 20 minutes into the future or something? Is that what you meant?
Maybe that's the one, yeah. There was some interview where someone was like, think of the sci-fi 15 minutes from now, something like that. But it got me thinking, like, is the pandemic and the bushfire like a point to like start, what would happen if everyone just like tried to grow gills and like live with their pollution, and like actually tried to, like the air became so toxic and like polluted, like we actually tried to retreat underwater or something. Or, like, the other part of the work was actually, I really like rubbish and waste. Don't like it, but enjoy it. Enjoy it.
It's fascinating.
But also, the idea of repulsion to our waste is quite interesting. Something that I think if we got over, you could, like Jazz was talking about, like the climate crisis. Like we've polluted this river, but what does it actually mean to like come to terms with pollution, or like try and live with it, as opposed to like being poisoned by it. So that was the idea of the character's journey, like trying to communicate with the river, but then getting hurt by it, and trying to like exist in this world, or like change the body or something. And then there's other levels that I want to do and I still plan to do. So I'll see. Maybe I'll become like a full frog at the end.
Amazing. Trying to go back into the city through the highways. Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Cal.
Thank you.
Well, we'll loop around to Justine and Layla. Yeah, do you want to just tell us a bit about the making of the work, what it's about?
I feel like we both collaborated on this thing, but we also come from very different lines of thought. Do you reckon it makes sense to like talk about our perspectives? Because that's what made the work. We have like two very different perspectives coming together.
Take it away.
Okay. So just for some context, this work was filmed in 2019. We were just invited to develop a project for Open Peacock Gallery. And Layla and I had worked together like on some small silly things. But we took this on because I guess we have, or at least like I have a relationship with Auburn, and I don't know, had some time. It's nice working with friends.
It's also because we both realised as adults we were flower girls on the exact same bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess we had this like relationship with Auburn and the Botanic Gardens that are directly across from the gallery that we were invited to show some work at. I think that story of us both being flower girls for our cousins' weddings, and like there's like a lot of Middle Eastern communities will take their wedding photographs at this garden, and we both have this like similar memory, and we're just kind of like thinking about the absurdity of it all, of this like practice of Middle Eastern wedding photography in this Japanese garden on stolen direct land. And I guess from there a whole bunch of other thought spirals came up, but one of them was like that I was really interested in particular was looking at the history of the site. So it was like, okay, Middle Eastern weddings in this like Japanese garden, like who did this, why is this happening, like what's this about? We found out that the gardens were designed by an engineer called Eric Black, who had no relationship with Japan. He designed the postcards based off of like a series of 3 Japanese postcards, which is why it looks really like just like high. I don't know, the space is like really heightened. I don't know if you've ever been there. I don't know if you can see it too well in this video. I don't remember what scenes we put in here. Anyway, there's a couple of different cuts that we made of the work. This cut we specifically made for a gallery space to like loop over. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. But so yeah, I guess like this site was really interesting to us. This engineer developed this garden bed based off of some postcards. We found out that the gardens were built in the 70s because local council had purchased this site off of a private landowner who received the site from the Crown in early colonial days. It had a history of being a rubbish tip. Before that, it was a clay mine, and before that, and still is now, like a sacred site for Dairy communities. A couple of the rangers would like just have these weird stories. I think you even told me one of like washing machine parts or car parts just emerging from the garden beds as like because there was never a cap placed over the landfill. So I think I really like this idea of like the site spewing up parts of its history, and from there I guess like we were like thinking about our own history and relationship with the site. As much as I don't really center it, I think that memory of like being this like flower girl in this wedding on the site probably did kind of push us to like build the little stories that the work is made of. I spoke with Layla a lot about my cousins who live a few blocks away in Auburn. When I was little, we used to play Mortal Kombat. I'd mostly just watch them because they were all older than me. They were boys, and they were just like playing these like powerful female figures in Mortal Kombat, and it was just like we're thinking a lot about how gaming can allow you to access like other parts of yourself that you might not be able to embody in the moment. And we wanted to build these characters and these little like mini vignettes and stories that might allow us to access parts of ourselves that we couldn't in Auburn, because it's a very specific community that's like connected to heaps of like our family and stuff. And I guess our thinking back then, 2019, it was like 2 years ago, was that we work with our friends who I guess grew up around Southwest and Western Sydney, came from like similar Middle Eastern communities, and identified as maybe like gender or sexually diverse. And maybe in 2019 it was those connections weren't so tight, so they were like friends of friends, or like I think worlds are really separated. Like our experiences in Auburn were very different to our experiences in where we would normally come across people who might identify differently. So I guess all of this, I don't know if this is like I'm making a clear enough thought for you to follow, but I guess all of this fed into like these little stories that we built and these characters that Layla designed some really sick costumes for. We met with the performers. I don't think they identify as performers, but we met with the people in the work a couple of times at my studio in Parramatta, and just spoke about what spaces we'd want to occupy if we could, or how we would be in the world if we could. And I think that fed into a bit of the costume design, but also just like our own personal memories and how that might reflect on the site. Like if we could embody whatever we wanted to on the site, what would it look like? And I guess reference the absurdity of its history, and maybe like reckon with our own relationship with the site as migrant settlers as well, and just play on the weirdness of it all, I guess. And cool. That was my thinking around it.
Yeah.
More or less.
I feel like Justine kind of covered a majority of our thought process. But yeah, even when you were just saying, I don't know if I'm having a definitive answer, I think that's quite telling to the work itself, that there isn't a definitive goal or like clean, cute, like reasoning. We just kind of, our heads were everywhere, and we're like, let's just like put it all in one work and make it strange. It doesn't have to have a beginning or an end, because what we're trying to have a conversation about and show is quite layered and nuanced and complex and strange. And even how Justine was speaking about these objects emerging from the tip, I guess is a pretty good like metaphor, catalyst for the whole work, is these foreign objects kind of being rejected by nature. In an essence would be our identities on this land as migrant settlers, and then a concentrate of that being these communities on this land and on that specific space. And the characters we've built have these kind of lingering familiarities of Western Sydney, or characters of costuming of that, but quite amplified, and it's all just strange. So just trying to look around us and collect the things and find humour, but also challenge why we're all in this one space.
I think it's tricky thinking back to where our minds were in 2019. I was reading a lot about like world building practices, and we filmed this. 2 weeks later I was in Beirut and was meant to come back and couldn't because of all these delays, and then had like a week to edit it before showing it at the Peacock Gallery. So we kind of showed it the first time as like a work in progress viewing. It was just like a really messy edit with like props thrown around the floor. So it was really nice to be able to come back to it like in the middle of ISO last year, and think about how we might want to sequence the footage and what story we might want to tell with this footage that we recorded so long ago with our friends.
And the funny thing about this work is it's had many lives, and I think it'll continue to just keep transforming. And I think that's like a testament to Justine and I's working relationship, because as she mentioned before, we're quite different. Like Justine's all the brains and I'm the hands. I make things and I don't
That's saying something because my brain is broken too.
But I don't really like things to be finished. I like things to be a bit, I guess like DIY and have some flaws, where Justine's a bit more researched and on top of things. I'm just a bit more lazy. That's my excuse. I'm like DIY, but I'm lazy. But that's been the nice thing about working with Justine and making this work, is we've been able to meet in the middle and allow it to have many lives. Just like the characters and the people.
Yeah, it was really fun, and we're still tight with everyone that we worked on. We like some of these people we didn't even know that were just like friends of friends who were like, you need to link up. It's a really nice way to just come together and talk about just how surreal it is to be, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of that made sense.
Yeah, definitely. I really like how you've used, I guess, like these exaggerated characters in humour as well. I've told this story before, but when we were installing, there was an electrician who was here to fix the lights, and he, I don't know if he really, like how much he understood of the work, but he was really obsessed with the giant Tian shoes, and so that really, I think he understood that character, because that is a character that resonated with him, and he was taking photos, and like I could see him slyly taking photos to send to friends, and I was like, it's okay, you can take photos, it's fine. And I think I really like how that the humor, I think it's a really accessible approach, that I think people can find different things within it for themselves.
Yeah, I hope you can, because I don't want to just like staunchly be like, this is what it is. It's what you want it to be.
Are the characters, like the costumes, were they made specifically for each person, or
that's an interesting question.
Did you sort of like give that role to people, or did they come with their own ideas, or?
So I think we spent a few days just like drawing up these like really weird characters, and then we met with the group of people and then kind of like tweaked the costumes according to the person, because it's not like we would dress someone who might be like more mass presenting in like the high femme, like, you know what I mean? So the costumes came first, but then I feel like we wove them around the person and what they felt comfortable embodying.
They definitely shifted. We had an idea of what we wanted to do, and then when we brought everyone together, we showed them the ideas, and then we collaborated. Yeah.
It was really open. We were kind of like, cut off this evil eye, chase a chariot,
Yeah.
go. And then it was just like,
Yeah, and on the day we're kind of just like freestyling as well. Like characters were allowed to.
it was so
We asked
chaotic.
them to kind of be like, "What do you want to do?" And then someone would just like, I don't know, do a flip. They were like mad.
It was so loose. It was fun.
Yeah, and I guess like the other thing about this work that I enjoy is like everything feels like an in-between moment. It's kind of just catching little glimpses before a specific start or end scene. It's just like, I don't know, when you're walking to the station and you're like, well, I'm dissociating. That's what the whole video is. But yeah, it was fun to make.
So good.
I really, really enjoyed the work. Thank you. I had a question about the Mortal Kombat element of it, because I really love the way that you had like the whole facing off, sort of getting ready to fight sort of situation, and then there was this really beautiful moment where all of the like flowers and leaves were falling like with the wind. Was that planned, or was that just a happy accident? Because that element just took me straight back to the, because that sort of thing would happen just as, you know, it would give that 3D element to the situation and everything.
I'm trying to think of the scene. Like, I know the scene on that little
You're on the
drawbridge.
bridge or something, yeah.
But I think we actually
And someone's
had,
throwing the.
Oh, the flower petals being thrown.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah, so
that
it was,
Someone was throwing the flower petals. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a
that's right.
reference to these like those
Yeah.
weddings that like, yeah.
Yeah, it was really.
This
really
one, this
awesome.
is, yeah, the chariot. Oh, they're not
Well,
throwing
in the
it.
basket, they had all their flower petals and they were throwing it.
Yeah, the big
Yeah.
Big
Yeah, it
flavoured
was meant to
nails
be
as
like
well.
an auntie
So
celebrating
sweet.
a
I
happy
love it.
couple, and the fight itself was meant to be like a form of like a lover's quarrel, but with a real, I don't know, tenderness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Because it took me straight back to playing the game and the showdown as well.
Yeah.
Because like there would always be like this cinematic moment where there was like this beautiful thing happening, and then it would just be chaos. And I really, yeah, it was really cool, and I like
That's so
how
nice.
you tied it in with like the lovers' quarrel and like the celebration and everything like that. It's really cool.
Thank you. I think we actually got our inspiration for that from this Black Mirror episode. I don't know if anyone's seen
yeah.
it.
I
Yeah,
love
we
that
kind of
episode.
became obsessed with it for some reason. I think we were both really tired. And we were just like, oh, whoa, this is freaking cool. And then
I think it's called Sniping Vipers.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
when we shot the video, it just kind of subconsciously was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking that when I was watching this.
Yeah.
Every time I come down to see the work, I think of that episode all the time. I was actually talking about it the other day with my sister, and was just like, it was a really interesting, like, I don't know, it was just, I can't explain it, but it was just a really fascinating episode, really. So I could see the connection there.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For weddings since you've been as well.
Sorry,
Have you been back and witnessed any weddings since?
not on the site, but there's always another cousin. But not here, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, we've actually been saying for years that we need to find the photo of us as children
Just
in the
all put
exact
them
same
okay,
spot
like-
and put them together.
That would be
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
It's on the red bridge. Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions?
You guys said that like this work has had like many lives. How do you feel like the narrative has changed since when you first created it to like
Well,
has it changed?
one life that it had was we worked with Tian at Blacktown Art Centre, and we did workshops with young people. So that was another life that it had, that we got to extend this work to other people to create their own Western Sydney personas and strangeness. And then we got to exhibit the works and the costumes they made as their own final images.
Yeah, that was really beautiful. It was like it was maybe October last year. During ISO.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and we just worked with like a bunch of like queer kids and allies or whatever from around Blacktown, and it was just fun sharing our process and then being like, right, go. Like, what are you gonna make? And
Yeah. It was actually amazing seeing how the process that you'd use to make this work, I guess based on your own reflections of place and yourselves and family, and seeing how that process actually for other people was really effective in creating these like bizarre but beautiful images.
It was so beautiful. I forgot about that series. Oh, I want to show you photos. I'll share them on Instagram soon. It was really, really beautiful. It was really special. So we just had some prompts. We just had some prompts and like pulled up Google Maps and were like, take us to your favorite spot around here. Tell us a story. What symbols or like imagery comes to your mind from this spot? And then there were a couple of other prompts that we made up around colors and smells, and if you lived in Mars, what would that be like? And somehow that came into like a series of costumes that we designed with them. Only over 4 days or something.
It was over the school holidays.
Yeah. Then we walked around Blacktown Arts Centre to different spots, and all the kids got to like dress up in their characters and costumes. And
yeah, I did their hair and makeup. So they looked like these real fantastical kind of creatures. Yeah. And then we had a friend, Jade, come and photograph them, and then we blew up those photos. Yeah, so I guess like one of the lives they had, the life this work had was an extension of other people. So not really. Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, maybe it was less about the story changing and more about like how is it going to look like if you use this formula. Yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah, and involved other people into the process.
It was so
creating.
nice.
Yeah.
Because I think everyone has this experience. This just happens to be what ours looks like. Yeah.
Especially in 2019.
And there'll be a new cut of the work as well.
Yeah. So we've worked on another cut that's a little more, I guess, like built around a narrative, kind of. It's still pretty confusing. But it's actually going to be released next week through a platform called Prototype. So it's another life. We'll see what happens.
You can all check it out.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite costume from the ones you made?
Oof. Yours is the cherub.
I loved the cherub, yeah.
Or the Mortal Kombat fighter. Muay Thai fighter.
What's yours?
I think mine is the auntie. Look here, right now.
With the sheet.
You can't see it, but I spent ages painting Xander's body gold, and it didn't work.
It's not coming up on this grade, but I think it'll come up on the next card.
What was the inspo between? There's one where it's like the hair extensions balaclava.
It was actually, I don't know about you, but for me it was like the real area girl hair extensions, because I used to always have really long hair extensions.
Yeah, it was such an Ivy
but
thing.
Just messing around with it a bit.
And the evil eye, it was just like always feeling like, I don't know, my family are very superstitious, so like this idea of the Ant or the evil eye or like something always watching you and like being so surveilled. Like if I go to like Stockholm Mall with my cousins, somehow my auntie's uncle's best friend's cousin's neighbor would find out and tell my mom, and come back home and she'd be like, who are those boys who were out with on Maryland station? And then just be like always just feeling so surveilled in the West, and like I don't know, just like little silly things like that. So I really also love the evil eye character. I think our friend Claude just like embodied it with like the silliest humor.
Yeah, and with this we were saying like who would we want to be our evil eye and our surveillance and our protector. So.
Yeah, it was fun.
So good.
It was also just fun to shoot it in the middle of the day and all the people were like, what the hell?
Did anybody like say, wow, what are you up to? Can we get involved? Like anything like that?
People would just come and like be filming like in our face. And like, can you just step aside a little bit?
Yeah, maybe we should speak to that, because that was actually a pretty big part of the work that we didn't want it to be empty. We didn't want to rent out the space. We just wanted to be randomly in the middle of the day as everyone was going about their business. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like an intervention of like, this is happening. I don't know.
Did people ask you what was going on?
Yeah, all day. Kind of freaked out. Are you taking photos of me?
I mean, it would be really funny, to be honest. Great. Well, thanks, Justine and Layla.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
So finally, Soa.
You kind of prompted with the whole, you know, Western Sydney futurism thing, which is, I feel like, kind of everything that I've ever been doing. It's just sort of been like futurism or like Western Sydney futurism. But somebody had like sent me this video last year, and there was like a word for it, but just sort of the whole video was about not like imagining the future in this dark, depressing way. Like every single one of my favorite cyberpunk or sci-fi movies, and I'm sure like pretty much all of you could agree, like with your own favorite sci-fi and cyberpunk movies, like it's always this intense, dystopian, ugly place where like humanity is like literally on the brink of like, you know, destruction. And for a lot of my artist career, I was sort of making artworks that sort of still spoke to that like destructive, really hyper-realistic, futuristic environment. And then I kind of just like sat back and I was like, you know what, I don't even want to live there. Like if this is the future and you know, the future is incoming no matter what, it's the only thing that's guaranteed, like why would I want to live in this ugly place, desolate, scorched earth place? So I kind of just like tried to imagine a really nice place maybe, or maybe like a familiar place but still in the future. And so yeah, so I guess the kind of the way I like came up with each of these pieces is I didn't have a car at the time, so I was just like poking around on Google Earth and like trying to remember some places that I've had like really strong just sort of sharp memories that I guess that we could apply to anywhere else we've been to in Western Sydney. Like I feel like we've all kind of seen somebody pop a wheelie, like you're just chilling out and like somebody will do a wheelie and it's like the sickest thing ever. It's like that could be applied to like anything in like the next like 50 kilometers from us, like that way. Like it's a strong icon of, I guess, what goes down here. And then like that one, I was actually with you, I think, and like a whole bunch of other people. We were on John Street in Cabramatta, and like I don't know, some people were just like drifting, and it was just like I don't know, you just go like, man, in my brain, like this is too crazy. Like I don't know, like when you see it every day, it's such a normal thing, but you see it every day. And then this one, just I spend a lot of time like at all these weird lookouts around Western Sydney, and yeah, and so yeah, I just tried to like come up with some stuff that we would see around Fairfield. Like this one here is Moonrise Lookout, which is sort of near Carmsley Hill Farm, if you know where that is. And that one there is outside Cabramatta Station. And then that one's actually Paulding Street, which is just like around the corner from here. But
yeah, and what were some of the things that you incorporated into these scenes that I guess were maybe different to how you'd approached a work before? Because you were saying that before it was quite like dystopian,
yeah,
the way that you
like,
created images?
Ugly. Yeah, well, like these sorts of like designs on the road, I was like trying to envision like completely city builder, like I'm gonna plan a city, man, like what's gonna happen? So I did like solar roads. So this is a solar panel, and like in my future of Western Sydney, we're powering our cars or like the houses around us with these solar panel roads. And you've got the same sort of like detailing in the ceilings and stuff like that. And you can't actually see it, but there's some on the back of those lamps. It's the same on this one as well. I'm just like walking around like this is like a goddamn house tour or something. So there's solar roads there as well, and just on the top of the houses, I thought, why can't they look cool? They're always boring looking. My mum's actually a permaculture designer, so I was trying to incorporate some of that into the piece as well. Like I actually imagined that sort of glass house building in some massive, really cool facility, like not like an oppressive GMO like farming facility, but like a nice facility. Maybe we in the future, like we're growing communally in buildings, and you can sort of see one here, like a home one. And yeah, like I guess also the thing about the future that I think it doesn't register to like, I don't know it because I'm not in the future, but you think about like where you were 20 years ago or 10 years ago, we still have the same stuff. Like, I don't think we're going to be 10 years, 40 years even into the future and we're still like not, you know, driving the same cars or like bikes and stuff. Like, we're in 2021 and, you know, you can have a 16K TV or like, you know, everybody in the house has an iPhone, but we still like listen to vinyl records. And, you know, I've had cars from 20 years ago. Like, these things aren't going to go away. We're just going to sort of, things are going to build around us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like a slow transition.
Yeah, and we're in a society now where throwing stuff away isn't really like something that we want to do. And I tried to base like all my pieces around car culture and drift culture, which is something so deeply rooted in Western Sydney. And I think that, you know, in 20 years we're still sort of going to be going down this path of that sort of lifestyle. One thing that I didn't really manage to work out before I finished the pieces was like hotting out. I envisioned all the cars to be like hotted out solar, like solar skylines and stuff, but I just didn't technically know how to build a 3D solar skyline. In my mind, like, we're all driving these sick, fully solar paneled or like electric drift cars. That's how I kind of see our future.
Well, I guess, like, you know, I mean, electric cars look like cars.
Yeah.
As well.
That's
you know, like, yeah, actually a realistic portrayal of futuristic cars. They just look like cars.
Yeah, like they don't, like there's, like design can only go so far. Like, we're always going to have the wheel. We can't really get any more. Like, we've gotten to the point we've gotten to this critical mass where it's like, where can we go? We can make very small changes, I think, but those small changes could make such a massive difference. And maybe we don't need like a better world. Maybe our world's fine, but we just need these small changes. Like, how much better would our lives be if we had solar roads, like, or somewhere to like communally grow things, or just like more time to enjoy and have fun and not feel like we're like killing the earth and stuff. Yeah. Sorry, I got really weird and deep.
No, that was good.
What program do you use?
What program do I use? Oh, you want a list? Okay. So I did the characters in Daz Studio, which is a free program, and I've been using it for like 10 years. It's so bad. It's so terrible. It's so buggy, but it's free, and, you know, I don't feel the need to, well, now I do feel the need because it's gotten to that point where I just have to. But, you know, you can make sick artwork on a very low budget, but the rest of the stuff was done in Cinema 4D with Octane. So I'm switching around a lot from different softwares, and some stuff was just done in Photoshop. I actually put these filters on after I'd rendered out the image. So for those that don't know, I work all in 3D, so everything, you know, it took me like ages just to even get the camera right. I was like, I don't know, I really want to do these really cinematic panoramas because I feel like we're so constrained to square 4x3 like social media sort of things. I just like to make things unpostable now, so you have to come in and see the work properly so you can get the full picture. But yeah, I put these photo filters on everything afterwards and try to make them look like they were taken with old analog cameras, because I think, yeah, that's another thing that's probably not going to go away. Like, we still have this fascination with old technology and stuff, and I don't see the reason why we can't bring old things into the future with us. But yeah, we can capture future moments with them. Yeah, that's the programs I use: Photoshop, Daz Studio, and Cinema 4D. I think that's it. Maybe a bit of Blender. Yeah.
I love the way you've like mounted it. It feels like in the 90s, like my cousin's bedroom, so they'd have those like really long, like really rectangular photos of like books and stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I got to give somebody else credit for this. I don't know who. Dylan installed this.
Dylan installed it, yeah. But Alinda, who's the curator here, gave us some options on how to mount.
There you go.
Them.
Yeah. There you go. I like it. Yeah.
That's great.
Do you ever make like images based off of a place?
Yeah. Well, yeah. These are my other stuff,
Yeah.
or
Or are they mostly just imagined places?
it's always imagined places. Like I don't really see much of a point in building places that already exist. If you're gonna go ahead and create a place in 3D, like I have to set the limits in my program for how's the sun gonna react. Is it, what kind of weather is it? I can like change all of these aspects. I can make sure I've got certain dips in the ground. Like it's really, I likened it to being like a god. Like if I'm a god, am I going to create something that already exists in its perfect exact form? Like it doesn't. I'd rather imagine something at a heightened scale or create somewhere that's completely from my mind. Yeah. Oh, you got a question?
Yeah.
Matt?
I was wondering, you were saying that like you make these all in 3D, so they're like full worlds that you can sort of go
Move around.
within. Do you have like the capacity to, put avatars or something inside of these worlds?
Or and make it like a game or something?
in some sort of way, or like like VR or something like that. AR.
I could probably do like a VR thing. Like I'm not versed enough in VR. But yeah, this is definitely like, you can turn around, we can pan the camera that way and you'll see like the same sort of exact under bridge. Is that what you call
underpass.
it? Underpass that you would see like down there at Paulding Street. Like I tried to still give indicators of where the places are. If I had the pictures of the exact Google Maps searches that I had taken, like you can see what's going on there. I'm pretty sure there was like a red brick house on the side of the road as well, and a red brick house is really synonymous with Western Sydney, and I just try to imagine that in the future maybe like we could build houses like this, or the station and stuff outside Cabramatta. Like it's still like there's still hints of where it is, but just changed a bit. Yeah.
You can actually see Whitlam Library. I think that's meant to be Whitlam Library.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a building, I've forgotten what it's
That's
exactly
right, yeah.
called. But yeah, that would be John Street. That's Railway Parade, the road is called. And then this is Moonrise. So you can see the full city from if you go up there.
Cool.
And chilling. Like I have a lot of memories of just hanging out in my car, like with friends, just at lookouts and stuff. Like I don't know, there's a lot of memories of just being in cars in Western Sydney. It's kind of weird. It's kind of sad that we're just sort of reduced to that, but it's fun at the same time.
It's because the bus is such.
Yeah,
the bus
I was going to
is
say
like,
the public transport's terrible.
I will never catch any bus.
Never come.
No
There'll be no
way.
bus for you to catch. We'll never come.
Get an anxiety check on them. No way. Yeah.
How do you start and end?
How do I start and end?
Yeah, because it's like painting. Like how do you know? Like because you can make anything in 3D. So like how do you start a work and then how do you call it done as well?
Yeah, the starting part's I think the hardest part. If I have no idea what I'm doing, it's really hard for me to feel motivated to get it going. So yeah, taking those Google images, screenshots, or even if I'd gone there and taken a photo, it would have been heaps easier to sort of get it going. But I guess I started by putting down the buildings I knew would look similar, or that I think would represent those buildings in the future. And then I was like, man, this looks boring. We can't just take a picture like straight up. We got to tilt it. Like, what needs to go where? What should I flesh it out with? And yeah, just trying to come up with different solutions for things in the future. So I knew I wanted to have like the farm sort of place to represent all the farm work that goes on out here as well. So just trying to put enough into the pictures, but also not filling them up completely to the brim. And then I usually the finishing part's really hard because it's like, what color should it be? What photo filter should I put it on? What camera should I take the picture with? Because you can render it out in different cameras too. It's a bit of a challenge. And then eventually I figure I'm done. Lighting is also really hard. Lighting is stressful.
The lights are incredible though. Yeah.
So
I was gonna ask, was it easier to start with these because you actually had a place to start from, as opposed to other images where you're creating a whole world from scratch?
I think so, but also like just making those executive decisions of like what should stay and what should go, and what do I, not only what do I want to be, but what do I realistically see, you know, being in. Like realistically, we're not going to knock down the whole highway, so that has to stay. And like, you know, realistically, you know, we're still going to have roads or something like that. Realistically, little kids are still going to be chucking the TNs up there. Like that's never going to stop. So yeah, I think, does that answer your question?
Yeah. And it's interesting hearing you talk in that way of like, it's almost like what you're editing out and changing to create these futuristic scenes. I mean, it's almost like you are a town planner for a god, you know, like it's actually really interesting thinking about your process of doing this. Is actually the process that we're all involved in, ultimately in creating these futures.
That's it. We have to make the decisions, and I think that we have to make them now. And also, like, what's going to be a tradition? Like, is drifting still going to be a tradition? Are we still going to be hanging out in, you know, lookouts and stuff? Like, hopefully. But yeah, I think that, I don't know, I try to reckon Afrofuturism, which is like a lot of my work deals with that, but taking all the culture, like black culture in the world that's existed for, you know, X amount of thousands of years, and then translating that through a future context, so a positive future context. Like those past things that have happened are not going to be erased. We just have to move forward and take them with us and just be positive about it and make something beautiful. Yeah,
great, thanks.
Magic.
I love the skies. I love them so much.
Which one? Oh,
the skies.
I love your clapping. The skies.
Yeah, are they like modelled from real actual skies, or is it all like developed post?
So I don't have a camera that can take the sorts of pictures I need for the skies, but cool. It's this thing called a HDRI map, which is like a really richly color dense photo, and the person takes it and it's like 360. I just buy them or download them now, but you basically lay that onto this massive dome that would simulate the sky as we would, put that there, and that's casting all this light down onto the 3D scene. So yeah, so I have to like recreate the sky, and all those colors still affect like all the lighting, because it's shining down that light. Like the computer translates that light into light into the computer. So yeah, I had to come up with a decision like, that's supposed to be early morning. This one, no wait, sorry, that one's supposed to be early morning. That one's supposed to be sunset, and that's obviously nighttime. Like, so yeah, coming up with the decisions of what time of day would be which one, and yeah.
That's very cool.
All good?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Stella. Okay, well that concludes our artist talk. Thanks everyone for coming and being so participative.